Welcome to Alienating the Audience, a podcast that is sopping wet with science fiction. I'm Andrew Heaton, the thinking man's nerd. And today we are going to partly review, partly analyze, and partly mediate the latest Star Wars film, The Rise of Skywalker. Nick Sperdute, a regular feature of the show, is joining me as a guest proper to discuss that latest Star Wars film, which he enjoyed. I am more skeptical, and that makes for a good chat. And whether or not you loved the film, or you hated the film, or are the director of the film, stick around after, because the last 15 minutes of today's program are basically Nick and I hating on Gungans, which we experienced recently when we made a trip to Naboo. My guest today has been on the show many times. It's Nick Sperdute. Nick, thank you for coming on.
I've been on every time.
You've been on that's right. You've been on every single show, but now you've been kicked up to doing the proper interview with me.
It's about damn time, is all I have to say.
And I am excited to talk about this. We're going to talk about The Rise of Skywalker. For those of you at home listening, we are going to spoil this. There are spoilers ahead, but I also suspect that the audience is comprised of people that have already seen The Rise of Skywalker twice or are actively boycotting it. I doubt there are very many people that just haven't got around to seeing it yet. So we'll go ahead and throw that out there. Nick, we have different interpretations of The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
I thought it fell apart in the third act. You like it, yeah? You're a pro Rise of Skywalker person.
You know, I have a lot of mixed reviews about all of the Star Wars films in general, ups and downs. Obviously, I've got my favorites, my least favorites. I gotta say, I enjoyed this movie a lot. Yeah, there were bits where I kind of can understand where people go, and they have their ups and downs, and some people are very justified in that. But in other ways, I think they're kind of just being contrarian to do so.
Yeah. Well, so I've I've decided I'm going to start working on Star Wars critical theory. And this is how we ought to consider Star Wars when these individual films come out. So I've come up with 3 criteria. One is, does the film work structurally as a film?
Yeah.
Is it well executed or poorly executed? Is it subjectively fun as a fan? Do I just like it, even if it has problems? And then I'm going to add a third category, I think, which is what a lot of people get understandably hung up on. I certainly do, which is, does it improve or hurt the Star Wars corpus? So, for example, Jar Jar Binks absolutely destructed the Star Wars corpus. Horrible move. Like, that was just, it was, if he'd been in some other film, maybe we could have done it, but for Star Wars, I was like, what were you thinking? I'm going to say midichlorians are in that category.
Yeah. I'll be honest, if I never see another Gungan, I'll be happy.
Me too, buddy. Me too. So those are all things that I think, that I take note of when they're in there. But I'll add to that, like, I really thought about this because I've seen it twice. So I saw it the night it came out, and then I went back and saw it with my family. And right. I think that we all have to remember, as adults, whenever you watch any Star Wars film, you have to remember you can't experience it again as a child. You will never again experience Star Wars as a child, because
you're
I feel
no longer a child.
Right. So many of us are like, that in no way made me feel the way I first saw Star Wars when I was 9 years old. Well, no, sadly it can't. We're all embittered old people now. So we have to take it on that metric.
But at the same time, it's also still made a lot of the times for people that are 12 years old and 15. So that's another thing where we look at it and people just assume it should be made for the adults that are watching it, but that's not really the case.
Yeah, it's true. Our friend Kevin, his favorite film is The Phantom Menace, which
because
I find baffling, but that was the first film that he saw, and he grew up on it.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. I mean, again, the Gungans, but it makes sense to me why he would enjoy that film.
Yeah.
As, sentimental.
Yeah. I agree. So I kind of like, I'll give that. So I think the 2 faults that we can get into in Star Wars that are very, very easy to get into are one to grade it on the did I feel like a child curve, which I don't think is admissible. And then I think the other thing that people can get into trouble with is, was this 100% how I would have made it? Which probably not. And then also, we can always nitpick stuff to death. It's very science fiction is very, very easy to do that. I'm going to say if it's particularly egregious, and I believe that there were egregious things in this film that I will bring up in a minute, they're worth talking about. But for example, there's a wonderful essay before this became passé. There was a wonderful essay in a book called "Written in Darkness" by Troubled Americans, and it was called "On the Feasibility of the Death Star Trash Compactor," and it's a 4.5-page essay about why you would never need a trash compactor on a Death Star because you could just jettison your trash into space.
Which they do at one point.
They do, but they also crumple it. But I'll say, like, from a film reviewing perspective, I feel like, yes, that is something of an illogical thing to put in there, but it doesn't really derail the film. It doesn't derail the film. It doesn't derail the franchise. It doesn't make everybody gasp and moan the way it does when Jar Jar comes out.
If anything, it makes a fun scene between some really great characters that we haven't yet seen, like, sitting still and interacting, because at that point they're still running, right? Most of the movie is them, or the beginning is at least them trying to get away from stormtroopers and trying to find their way out, and then they all get trapped there, and then they're stuck there for a few minutes, and we get to actually watch all of these characters interact, and it really lays the groundwork for how they interact for the rest of the films.
Yeah.
Just based off of that little scene.
I agree. Even if there's a technical foible or an economic foible, the character and plot arc are furthered, and therefore we can let that kind of slide. I do get hung up on little things like to bring in an entirely different franchise. It drove me crazy in Star Trek Into Darkness when they beam from Earth to Kronos. I was like, you can't do that. That technology is not like that kind of thing where you're just absolutely giving the finger to canon really irritates me. But
listen, if we want to get into the Star Wars movies, the new ones, Star Trek,
that's true.
That's a whole nother show.
That's true. You're right. We could definitely do a whole show on that. So, but anyway, those are. I'm going to say those are the criteria by which I'm looking at these things. And I'll give an example of kind of the execution thing.
Yeah.
I see one big structural problem with the Force Awakens, which is that they've got yet another super weapon. I think Star Wars suffers from super weapon inflation, and I see several structural problems with The Last Jedi. There are just several things in the film that I didn't think worked very well. That said, I enjoyed both of them very much. So even though they had problems in them, I would still rank them as good movies that I would watch again.
The biggest problem with Last Jedi, in my opinion, lack of a super weapon. That's just me personally. That's just how I felt about it.
Well, they're always coming back. Or, on the flip side, I appreciate that Rogue One was a masterfully built movie, very well written, and everything. It just wasn't as much fun to me. I don't like it as much as the other two. I'm happy to concede to my film buff friends that it's a better film. But I guess I like the worst films. That brings us to The Rise of Skywalker and the many problems I have in the third act. So, Nick, do you want to begin? Let's start with my problems, and then we'll get to the stuff I like about it. Okay. Because I feel like people at home, my guess is there's a bunch of very angry people, and they want to vicariously burst out their anger at you through me. So I'm going to become a science fiction fire hose of bile.
Please, hit me.
Okay, all right, great. So I like the film up until the third act, at which point some of the plot devices are so weird and crazy that I couldn't think of anything else. I'm going to give you an example here. I feel like piloting a spaceship up, just the direction of up, as in the Star Destroyers on Exegol, that should not require a transceiver. That seemed like a very, very weird. Like, you could, even if there was a storm or something and you just needed to go up, you could just look out the window and go, oh, right, that's the direction of up. Everybody go up. But they all needed a transceiver to go up that I thought was just stretching it.
Well, I see where you're coming from, and it does very much sound like the old CPD, the convenient plot device, which is rampant in Star Wars and most sci-fi, most movies to be fair. But I think if you look at the Star Destroyers as being unmanned and being mostly controlled just through maybe the dark side is like that large, because there's one Star Destroyer where there's clearly people on it, right? Uh-huh. So it feels very much like those, like that could be controlling the rest of these, but maybe doesn't have the ability to pilot them all without a transceiver to make them go. That makes the most sense to me, because also if you think about it, where at the end, at the very end, when they lose, all of the Star Destroyers on the other planets start to just fall out of the sky. Like, if there's actually people on those, they're not just going to fall out of the sky. They're going to start shooting and attacking. So
your theory is that there is a primary or a handful of primary Star Destroyers, as evidenced by the Nazi-esque British guy captaining the vessel. However, the other Star Destroyers are very deadly Roombas. And
pretty much. Honestly, yes, pretty much.
Okay.
Other than the fact that they're going to clean, they're going to destroy instead, and it's all based on what Palpatine has managed to gather and create in all this time that he's been on this really creepy, terrifying planet.
Okay, that brings me to my next problem with Palpatine. Well, hold on, and I'll back up to give a little bit of credit to that problem that really initially irritated me. Having thought about it and having watched the film twice, you could make the argument, if they do not verbally state it, that the transceiver is there not to guide these ships up or to keep them from bumping into each other, but because there's some sort of like continental-sized maelstroms above, and the ships themselves can't see where the pockets of electricity are, something like that. It doesn't seem to be an issue for all of the invading ships, but maybe there's at least an argument to be made there. But okay, let's get to Palpatine then. First, I love that Palpatine is in this film.
Me too.
I love Ian McDiarmid. I think he did a great job. And I do think it's really cool what they did to make Palpatine the villain of all three trilogies. I think that was a masterstroke. I really did like that. That said, though, I have trouble following why he needs Rey. So we're led to believe that Palpatine cloned himself and downloaded his Sith Force Ghost into the clone body. Well, if that's the case, if he has the ability to clone himself, why need he capture his granddaughter and being John Malkovich himself into her brain?
Well, I think we mentioned this briefly in talking, but I found that in my head at first I thought, maybe he just didn't die at all. Maybe just Palpatine didn't die whatsoever. And, theoretically, Darth Maul survives a big fall, being cut in half.
Because Darth Maul pops up in Solo, and the chronology is such that that's after the events of Phantom Menace, right?
He's also in some of the animated stuff,
right, yes,
where he has spider legs and whatever. Whether or not you want to, that is canon technically, so if you want to just push that, then fine.
No, it's canon,
but, so then he didn't die, so then he got cut in half and fell very far away. Now, you don't know what they're falling into or onto, or if it's a reactor or whatever. It could blow up the...
Apparently, if you're falling into a reactor, you don't want to have legs. Those legs will weigh you down. If you don't have legs, there's enough gust to blow you up.
It's like being drunk in a car crash. It helps
you from not tensing up. Exactly. You want to be a little bit loose before you make that impact.
So, but the other thing is, because, you look at it and Kylo Ren... sure, Luke does it in Last Jedi, but it's just his force being projected. But Kylo Ren, he gets into that terrible crash, that horrible crash, and he just walks out unscathed.
It's true, yeah.
Not a thing on him. And clearly it was the force that protected him, right? That's the only... unless those things are the most, have great airbags that we've never seen. I have to imagine that it was the force that protected him when his ship went tumbling after Rey cut it off, which was a very cool sequence, by the way.
Yeah, sure. I agree on all counts. And I'll say I don't think that they structure it that way, but there's a way to potentially get around that. I think of the film, they did not evidence that Palpatine is in the same body that he had at the end of Episode 6, and we're given the tanks full of Snoke, the Snoke tanks. And other things, we are led to believe that cloning played a role in this. There's also a character on the Rebel planet that mentions something about the Sith and clones and magic. That said, though, I do think that would be a very interesting plot device had they gone with your route, where in that case, say like Interview with a Vampire, one of the vampires is presumed dead and thrown into a lake, but he's not quite dead, and he sinks to the bottom and stays in the mud for 3 months, nursing himself back to health, eating frogs, and then finally climbs out at night. And it's this just, pulling himself up from absolute destruction in inches before coming back and reassuming his authority. I think that would be a really cool story for Palpatine, is, Palpatine survives the initial tumble in the Death Star, somehow manages to get off before the whole thing collapses, or maybe, I don't know, maybe he's physically shielded somehow and spends the next 30 years, living in dumpsters on Coruscant, trying to slowly get his underground gang back together and just becoming more decrepit, but more and more focused. It would be a great plot line.
It would make a lot of sense to me that somehow Palpatine was on some sort of escape pod, was able to get away and get shipped off to this specific planet in which all of this creation started, I mean, it would make sense that someone this smart, this ahead of it, would have the ability to create some sort of escape in case this thing didn't work out. I mean, yeah, he seemed to put a lot of eggs in that basket. Mind you, Darth Vader.
Man, they love putting eggs in those Death Star baskets. That's
Well, it's not only the Death Star stuff, but he puts a lot of eggs into the "I'm pretty sure you're gonna be bad soon" baskets.
Yes.
The amount of people where they just assume that their loyalties are going to change in Star Wars is what makes me love it. It's just
I'm good at reading personality types, and I think that you soon will embrace the dark side.
Because they never prove it. Except for, I guess, Anakin. But other than Anakin, it's not really proven that a good person's going to turn bad, right? I don't know. It's just more like just hopeful. It's just a lot of wishful thinking.
You know what? That's what I like about Palpatine. He's an optimist. He just always assumes today's going to be brighter than yesterday.
And not a lot of people would say that, but I think that you and I just discovered something here.
So I did a deep dive on Palpatine in preparation for our talk, Nick, and there's a lot of really good Star Wars legends involving Palpatine. So prior to the new series coming out, it was called Star Wars Expanded Universe. It has now been deemed sub-canonical, but not necessarily incorrect. It just means it's not canonical, but it might be right. And they even have a nod to that in one of the films where they say every legend has some truth in it. So it was a very clever way of basically saying we can use these storylines and plot lines or rely on them for external world building when we like, but we don't have to be internally consistent with them. And two of the plot lines in the Star Wars legends involve Palpatine. The first one is Dark Empire, and that one is, I think, the one which best dovetails with the Rise of Skywalker. In Dark Empire, Palpatine, who is now, the emperor of the entire galaxy and the greatest Sith who's ever lived, he don't want to die. So what he does is he clones up a bunch of Palpatine bodies.
Right. I know this. Yeah.
Yeah. And when he is killed by Darth Vader or on the Death Star near Endor, he downloads into one of these clone bodies. And I don't know all of the plots. I think that he's actually killed several times after this. That like Luke tracks him down and kills him again.
Right.
And then Han Solo shoots him. And what ends up happening to him, which would dovetail with the Rise of Skywalker, is he has one clone body left, and unbeknownst to him, his personal physician is turned on him. And his personal physician has built in genetic booby traps in the last remaining clone, and that those booby traps are basically, they resonate with the dark side in a deleterious way, so that the more powerful he is, the more resonant with the Force he is, the more rapidly the body ages and decomposes.
Oh, well.
And because his original bodies were all destroyed, it's the only Palpatine body. So he doesn't have there's not like a sperm bank he can go to get more Palpatine genes. That's it. So in theory, maybe he could, recycle this crappy clone body every 2 weeks forever, but assuming that he is clearly a mortal at this point and doesn't have another clone exit strategy, then the being John Malkovich, I'm going to download into my granddaughter would make more sense.
Right. Yeah. Then he would give a good reason of why he needs Rey. I mean, what I said before, this is just, I guess we can wait, but it's more speculative of how I canon it in my own head at the beginning of this is just a little bit different. And it basically starts with, Rey and Kylo being in separate parts after Last Jedi, right? Mm-hmm. They're apart and they both feel and see and hear Palpatine, who finally gets to come back and go after them because Luke is dead. And Luke was the one protecting them from him. But Luke needed, obviously Luke's a Force ghost now, but he still needed his physical form to also be able to protect these two. And because of that, then that's why he's able to finally find Kylo and Rey and to give them this sort of warning or something, and then that's why Kylo then goes after him to try to kill him, and then Rey follows, because you know the story, you watched it.
No, I like it on both counts, and I'll say I would have liked to have seen more ominous foreshadowing of Palpatine. I think that part of that is probably just the fact that it appears that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson were going through a divorce over the course of this trilogy.
Very much so.
And so they did not appear to be working in unison to me. Presumably, had one director been in charge of all three of them, then Palpatine would have had some sort of foreshadowing in The Last Jedi, or maybe at the very end of The Last Jedi, we would have heard Palpatine cackling, which would have been a great way to kick the film off. So having a build-up would have been good. I like your theory that Palpatine basically would have sensed Rey were it not for Luke running interference. And so Luke hanging out on the Jedi homeworld with the Porgs has a kind of like passive role that it's playing to just sort of obscure whatever Palpatine's looking for. Like maybe he senses some darkness out there and he's not sure what it is, but he's able to kind of keep it from reaching Rey. I like that idea.
Yeah, I think that just, it ties it together. It's a nice little bow on the very beginning and everything of this specific film.
Well, and it would also explain a little bit in that when she encounters Luke's Force Ghost in The Rise of Skywalker, Luke's Force Ghost says, my sister knew that you were a Palpatine, but she trained you anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, how did you know that, Luke? So I'll give JJ the benefit of the doubt and assume that wasn't just a screw up. It would indicate that either Luke had communicated with Leia after his death as a Force Ghost, or alternately that they both knew, and that he knew there was a Palpatine out there in the galaxy, and elected to keep it a secret up until it was revealed to her, and then he acknowledged it.
Well, he basically thought she wasn't ready, right? He thought she wouldn't be ready until he was gone, and she could get that proper training that she was going to get. And because of that, he waited for the whole Palpatine thing. And also, Jedis, periodically see the future.
Yeah.
And he certainly could have seen this sort of showdown coming, and so just kind of prepared for it.
Yeah. But before I forget, there's one other possibility for Palpatine coming back, although it would not explain why he would need to download into a Rey quite as much. But there is another Star Wars Legends series, and I can't remember the name of it, but the part of the premise in it is that there's a thing called the World Beyond Worlds. And I might be mangling the terminology, but in effect, there is a kind of dimension that Jedi can access that is not connected to the time-space continuum. So I
think it's world between worlds.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. World between worlds. Yes. And Palpatine, for whatever reason, I don't believe is able to access it, but Vader can to some extent. In fact, there's like a whole thing. When you watch Rogue One, Vader has that really cool, ominous tower castle on Mustafar that he walks out of. So in this series, the whole point of the castle is to sort of collect and focus the Force so that he can bring Padme back from the dead. And in the series, he reaches out to a Sith Force Ghost who teaches him how to use this technology and open up the portal, and then immediately the Sith Ghost goes back in time and saves himself and comes out and tries to run away. And Vader has to kill him. It's a whole wacky thing.
Classic,
wacky Benny Hill style Star Wars moment. But there could be something like that going with Palpatine as well. If we wanted to avoid the just Force Ghost clone story, it could be that, who knows, perhaps Darth Maul, since he's apparently alive and kicking. Maybe he figures out a way to go back and yank his master back from the dead.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah. But I think clones. Okay, all right. Well, we've okay. I'm willing to. I'll give a pass on that, because I think if there's a presumption of a limited amount of Palpatine clones and they're in a degrading condition, then it makes sense that he's going to come get Rey. That initial rankled me. Okay, so we've covered ships going up, Palpatine. Both of these I'm going to give a pass to. Leia dying in order to say hello to her son. She's which I get that Carrie Fisher died in real life, and I'm sure that caused all sorts of script complications.
Well, as far as I remember, they had to actually use a lot of this stuff was what she shot in Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of it was just her scenes from Force Awakens, so they kind of had to pigeonhole. I actually heard that that's why Rose, the character, wasn't in it as much, because she had shot scenes with Leia in that, and they wanted her to be there for it, but she wasn't alive, so they
that
had
makes
to cut
sense.
those
So they
scenes.
gotcha. So they couldn't just they couldn't have Rose hanging out in the Millennium Falcon and then inexplicably hanging out with Leia drinking coffee. So they had the signliner. That makes sense. Yeah, I would think that would be a nightmare to have to work around. And I also suspect really awkward when Carrie Fisher was alive, because I could see J.J. Abrams going, "Hey, Carrie, we're just going to get about an hour and a half of reaction shots from you. No reason.
Hey, can you lay on this table real quick
Right.
and then get off of this table real quick?
Yeah, just say yes and then say no. Just kind of in case we need to splice you in the future in some random manner. We're just going to get a bunch of B-roll.
Not that we're planning to.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I can. So I'll give a little bit of that. That said, though, it seems that the plot device that they come up with to dispense with Princess Leia is to have her, since Kylo Ren and Rey are in a fight, and to force blurt Ben and then die.
So she gives what she has of the Force, the good side of the Force, the light side of the Force, to Ben in that moment. She gives it to. She says, "Here, this is what you're missing. This is where you can be." She shows him the light side of the Force in that moment, and then pulls him back from the brink. Okay. One of only 2 times in which people change their mind about which side they're on in the Star Wars universe.
Right, that's true. Yeah, the other one being Anakin, who has about the same time lapse of about 3.5 minutes. I think charitably, the best explanation I can come up with Leia is Leia senses that there is a make or break fight between Kylo Ren and Rey, and she decides to basically throw out all of her cards and exhaust herself and die in an effort to distract him, and hoping that might benefit, which it does. It buys Rey, 3 seconds to poke him in the stomach with her with her a lightsaber, and then she decides to bring it back. I don't know that Leia predicted any of that stuff, but in any event, it did work. So I think that might be what she was going for, was just, I'm going to get a distraction, or maybe it sounds like what you're intimating, Nick, is that there's some sort of kind of telepathic emotional connection going on, where she's sending a burst of love or something that temporarily deadens the Kylo Ray and lets Ben rise to the surface.
I think she's actually sending metachlorians over
via Skype
to him.
Skype-chlorians.
I think that's more likely.
What I will say I like about that scene, having thought about it and having read about it, I actually think the fight between Kylo Ren and Rey on what is either Yavin 4 or Endor, because I don't believe they tell us which Death Star it is, but let's assume it's Endor.
I believe they say Endor.
Do they? Okay. So anyway, it's the big water scene with all the crashing waves and everything, I think is actually brilliant, because it is an inverted parallel of the fight between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker on Mustafar. So
with the fire,
exactly,
the lava,
right? So like in Episode 3, they're fighting. They're surrounded by lava. Anakin dies and is reborn as Darth Vader. In Episode 9, they're surrounded by water, which is like life as opposed to fire. Kylo Ren dies and he's reborn as Ben. I think that's actually a really cool plot device that they employed, that I have to assume was very intentional.
That is, I don't think I've ever heard that theory, or have heard that theory. I shouldn't say ever. It's only been a couple weeks, but I really like that a lot. I will say this. I felt like we talked about this before too. I mean, no 2 people can fight in a Star Wars universe unlike just the ground. There can never be a normal lightsaber.
No one ever fights at a golf course. No one ever just, there has to be lots of moving, spinning things.
There's a bridge with like no railings, or there's just like a lot of clearly like trash compactors they can fall into, or holes in the ship.
Right, yeah.
There's a lot of holes in these ships for some reason.
There's a lot of bridges without railing.
A lot of empty space, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of empty space in this ship.
Yeah. But I thought that was a really good move. And I'll contrast that. One of the things that I dislike about J.J. Abrams in both episodes 7 and 9 is that he does rely so heavily on the rhythm of the prior movies. So the Force Awakens is beat for beat A New Hope. I mean, it is just a New Hope remicrowaved. And so much of the Rise of Skywalker feels like a remicrowaving of Return of the Jedi.
I don't think it's as much. I think Force Awakens was much clearer in the beats, but I do see your point.
Well, yeah, and my main thing is that I think that that kind of inverted parallelism between Mustafar and Endor, between Kylo Ren and Rey versus Obi-Wan Kenobi, I think that is a really interesting plot device and a really interesting parallel, as opposed to just, hey, we know what you like, we're going to give it to you again. Like, I thought that was a novel way of doing a plot callback, which I appreciated. Another one that I thought was good, and I don't know if this is me inferring too much into it, but when Anakin is turning, the rationale that Anakin has succumbing to Palpatine is Palpatine convinces him that the Sith have the ability to protect their loved ones from death, and has filled him with fear of Padme dying from childbirth.
Because he saw it. He saw the future.
Yeah, when Kylo Ren comes back as Ben, he saves Rey, and he does so through the good side of the Force. He does so not as a Sith, but as Ben Kenobi, as Ben Skywalker, and brings her back. So it kind of has that echo of Palpatine. It's refuting Palpatine's promise by illustrating it through the good side of the Force.
Yeah, I appreciate a lot of this. I hadn't drawn this strong a parallel between the last few scenes of each, but now I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'll say all of the parallels between episodes 3 and episode 9 are good, in my opinion. I think that they do a very good job of doing that. Where I dislike it is trying to just constantly recreate a sense of, we're outgunned rebels, but we're going to hug each other and then beat the odds. That's
Star Wars in a shell. That's like you can't have a movie where it's the good guys are equal to the bad guys. That just doesn't work. It's got to be.
Well, it's a crapshoot, my friends. We're evenly matched. 50-50 chance.
All right, you take that side of the universe. I'll take this side of the universe.
Also, I got to say, it's pretty morally ambiguous between us. I mean, they're more deontologists. We're utilitarians. There's really not a clear right and wrong. Yeah, I guess that wouldn't be very Star Warsy. But So an example of just importing wholesale a trope from Return of the Jedi is the friggin' horses on the ship. I thought that was so stupid. That is just ludicrous. And if it were a comedy, I would love it because I'm a big fan of horse jokes, but it wasn't. It was Star Wars. And I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to replicate that feeling of the Ewoks fighting the much more technologically superior force. But at least with the Ewoks, there's like a semblance of reality there, right? It's sort of like the Green Berets gone into the jungle and the local tribes people are shooting darts at them, but they're going to get them occasionally.
They still have to protect themselves, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, outmatched, but possible, right? Landing horses on a spaceship.
Yeah.
I'm just going to repeat, they landed horses on a spaceship. Like, if I were the commander of the ship, and they were like, Commander, the rebels have landed horses on the spaceship, I'd be like, have the ship rock back and forth by 20 degrees for 30 seconds. That should knock every single one of them off to their obvious death, and then we can proceed with the battle. But instead, they're landing stormtroopers to fight them. Okay, can you retcon that for me?
Okay, so this is a little trickier.
I dare say.
So this is the trickiest bit, but here's what I'll say. I don't think in the end they really make that much of a difference. Like, I think that they are there and they do have this fight, and eventually Finn blows up the thing, right? With the new girl, they blow up John, I think is her name. Mm-hmm. They blow up that ship that they're on, right? And then they get picked up. But notice we don't see the horses anymore.
Well, presumably they're all dead because they landed on a starship, and if it just, turned 15 degrees any direction, I
like that they even go, all right, well, track their speeders. They go, they're not on speeders. but just the fact that they would bring speeders down on top of the
again, that would be like bringing a motorcycle to attack a spaceship. I can't fathom, like, the only way this would even remotely conceivably work is if all of the horses have gravity boots, or alternately, if the hull of the ship has a permanent gravitational field to it that doesn't matter if you're swaying back and forth. But that doesn't appear to be the case, because later, I checked this the second time when I watched, the ship is starting to capsize, and they have to, like, kind of lean up against what had been the floor and is now the wall, because the whole thing's tanking. So,
well, here, I'll also say this. I think that I think they didn't think it through.
No, I think they went, how do we replicate this feeling? And also, I don't care about anything except feelings.
Well, it was the characters, too. They wanted to bring back those characters and give them a purpose. I think the ones that they met briefly that helped them buy the Death Star. I think they wanted a reason to have that woman be back, especially, and to have her be prominent, which is something I do respect about Star Wars movies generally. I can't say always. But generally, when they bring in a new character, they use them, theoretically. The only ones I could say, like the Knights of Ren, kind of got not really used very well. They should have been in all three movies.
They just kind of, I'm going to say they're just window dressing. They look cool.
Basically.
I like the moment when they're walking by and one of the stormtroopers goes, the Knights of Ren, and the other one goes, cool. And I was like, I like that. Yeah. But they never really explain them at all. They're the Knights of Ren, but they don't seem very loyal to Ren. They seem like
immediately start fighting him.
Yeah, the second he leaves the organization, they're like, we're moving up the chain.
Also, was it crazy to you, or not crazy, but was it like, oh man, because Kylo Ren, Adam Driver, immediately becomes really fun and funny as soon as he becomes good. Like, he just, like, immediately is making all these, like, little quips and, like, shoulder heads and stuff, and it's very funny, and I'm sitting there going, like, I kind of wish he was a good guy the whole time.
Me too. Okay, another thing I like about the film is they finally killed that guy. Oh, man. Okay, so I like Rey. I think Rey's a great character. One of the criticisms I hear of her regularly from film buff friends is that she is not a dynamic character, that there's not much of an arc. I don't care. I like her. I think she's fun.
Because she goes from a freaking scrapper to the most powerful Jedi in the history of the franchise.
Yeah.
But there's no arc to her. I've heard that too from people.
Yeah.
They go, there's no arc. I'm like, so if there's no arc and you keep this character from the very beginning to where she is now, I mean, where does that leave her? She'd get crushed by the Emperor within 36 seconds, and that would end the movie, right? No, she's training the whole time. She's learning the whole time. She's learning from every battle. She's learning how to use a lightsaber. She's getting better. She has this whole training sequence in the last movie. I mean, how much of an arc was there for Luke? It's the same exact arc. It's the same exact arc, other than finding out that his father was Darth Vader. She finds out her grandfather was Luke is Rey. Rey is Luke. If you don't like Rey's arc, then you don't like Luke's arc. Okay, sorry, she didn't kiss her brother, but come on.
But she does kiss. You make a good point. It is very clear that she is the character stand-in for Luke, unabashedly. And I was about to argue with you, Nick. I was about to go like, but in the case of Luke, though, he starts out as an insecure farm boy and becomes a great Jedi. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. She starts out as an insecure orphan and becomes a great Jedi. Yeah. No, that's true. It is the exact same arc. That is a good point.
And people bitch and they go, well, we knew she was going to win the whole time. Like, because she's the good guy. I'm sorry. But Star Wars kind of gives that away within the first 30 seconds.
Yeah.
The good guys always win. Just because some of them die doesn't mean they don't always win. The main good guys win every single movie. Always. That's how it has to fucking work. It's for kids. The main good guys have to win. I'm sorry. And the main bad guys have to lose. It's just how that works.
Yeah.
The people that take this, I call this the fad base.
Yeah.
I think I've talked to you about this before.
Go for it.
It's the people that take one person's opinion that they see on a site or Twitter or whatever, and they just use that as their own, and they regurgitate it over and over again, and everybody starts doing that. It gives people reasons not to watch the movies. It gives people reasons just to bitch about them, even if they don't know anything about them, even if they haven't seen them, just because they can go, well, actually, I don't think Rey has much of an arc. And it's like, well, maybe you don't pay attention then. Maybe you think you're somewhat of a professional movie person of some sort, but somehow you don't see this throughout the three movies. I mean, come the frick on. Sorry.
Touche.
Go ahead.
No. Touche. I think that's a well-established point. And to go back to the whole, this doesn't make me feel like I was a kid again. It's interesting for me. I kind of have to watch myself because I was complaining about the horses like really assiduously for days. Oftentimes to people that had not seen Star Wars or even knew about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes to people that were planning to see it and were very angry that I was spoiling it for them. And a couple of times people were like, "Oh man, it was almost dumb as the Ewoks, right?" And I was like, "You shut your goddamn mouth." The Battle of Endor was an important battle that made total unabrogated sense perfectly. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, I am basically what I'm doing is I'm saying that the equivalent of SS death squads were fighting bipedal teddy bears on a forest.
Well, it's the Gungans versus the droids. It's the Gungans who can barely stand upright, but somehow win the battle against the droids. It makes literally no sense. Only in that case, it's more of like watching the Three Stooges try to fight an army.
Yeah, well, you know
like
what? I'm going to swing for the Ewoks. Here's why. Gungans versus the droids is just like George Lucas applying slapstick comedy to CGI graphics. There's nothing going on there other than that. Ewoks versus...
Also, so they're supposed to be an army, which... Yeah, so you'd think they'd have some sort of military training in this, whereas the Ewoks, I know where you're,
Yeah, well, actually what I was going to say is that, like, whether or not you find it feasible or not, there's at least a purpose to the Ewoks versus the Stormtroopers. I mean, it was made as a clear parallel to the Vietnam War, and in it, America, or probably a better way to put this would be imperialist forces, are fighting the indigenous locals who are, setting bamboo traps and things like that, and it's illustrating an asymmetric power balance between two forces. So like with, Ewok, but anyway, my overall point is that like, I have to like anything that I absorbed before I hit puberty, or more specifically before I started drinking, I have a better memory on and a better memory of than anything in my 30s. So I have to be careful about that.
Well, sure.
That said, I never liked Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
I liked Kylo Ren up until he took his helmet off in The Force Awakens. And he went from, who is this cool, enigmatic, dark Force user, to mopey Darth Vader Jr. Mopey, quasi-pubescent Darth Vader Jr. I never liked that character. I always found him... But I didn't experience teenage angst, Nick. I went straight from, like, 12 to 45. I just did a loop of like being 12 and like worrying about monsters to being 45 and worrying about housing prices. I did not experience teenage angst at all. I don't get it. I don't get it with Kylo
One day
Ren.
you're playing a Nintendo and the next minute you're asking to do your father's taxes.
100%. That was exactly that. That happened over a week in sixth grade. So Kylo Ren I didn't think was a very good character, or rather he irritated me, and so I was glad he got killed.
Yeah, I mean, his arc, which there is one.
Yeah, there's definitely an arc to him, yeah.
But his arc I do find more flimsy in that it feels very similar throughout all three movies, where it's very much like, I'm not really sure about this whole dark side thing. Like, I'm on it, and I'm, like, embracing it when I have to, but I don't know. It seems like there's something up. So it does make it more feasible, I guess, at the end for him to turn, just because he seems to be on the brink of turning throughout, and they tease it too much, I think. I think they tease it too much in the three movies that he's gonna turn. Like, just with the moment with him and his father, him and Han before he does the whole thing. It's very much teased like it's gonna be a fatherly son sort of thing. And then he turns, and then he's still bad. And then it keeps going, and then he has these moments with Rey, and you're like, oh, maybe, it's too much of that teasing without, you don't get it until the very, very, very end. I think if they left it a little bit more, cleaned that out a smidge, and then you just get mean, and then he starts to slowly kind of... But by the way, I mean, she is at the end just making out with a terrible, awful murderer, but I guess we're cool with that.
Yeah, I don't feel like films ever really. I can't remember. Actually, I can't remember this. There's a podcast I listened to called Imaginary Worlds, to give them due credit, and they were talking about villains in an episode recently. And one of the guests on the podcast was talking about like what would have happened if Vader had gone with Luke off the Death Star to Endor.
Yeah.
Like, imagine like Luke showing up at a ship going like, "Hey guys, this is my dad. I know he blew up a whole planet, but he's good now." Like,
well, I also think that is why, Kylo Ren has to die there. And why
he didn't want to do community service. He didn't want to have to go talk to a judge about picking up trash to make up for the 7 planets he blew up.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I can feel it. I get the element. I know it's got to be done right at the end. I don't think she had to kiss him at the end, but whatever. JJ, do your thing, I guess. But
and there's like clearly a draw and a connection between them. There's a little bit of an echo in Luke and Leia there, which they might have been capitalizing on. But there's also the whole dyad thing that's brought about in the movie.
Well, see, I find I see Leia a lot in the Finn character.
Mm-hmm.
I find that I see. Like, the parallels are very clear to me. Like
Poe is very clearly Han Solo. I mean, Poe is the dashing, chaotic neutral or chaotic good rogue character, as was Han Solo.
They even add the Spice Runner thing just to liven up his past a little bit,
right? Yeah,
and to make him more of a bad boy, sort of.
Yep.
And I think you get that, and like he had relationships on random planets with random people. Yep. I think that adds to all that, especially with what we saw in the movie Solo. Where, that's kind of how Han's past is. So I think, those two are very clear. The Rey and Luke thing we already just talked about, and I don't want to get back into it, so I'll just get upset. But
why do you think Finn is Leia?
Because I think he's the most empathetic.
Okay.
I think he's the one that cares the most about Rey. Clearly, like the entire movie, like this one especially, he's just like looking for her. He's just like, but where's Rey at? Is she okay? Is she great? And not that that's all that Leia was, but he's also very strong-willed. He also has an idea of what is right and what's wrong. He's got that ability to lead, although he doesn't use it, but he uses it when he needs to, which is exactly how Leia was in those moments, is where she could just take charge and be like, no, this is what we're doing. I got this, And even more so than Finn. If anything, they let Finn get a little bit more comically enhanced, I think.
Yeah.
They give him more of a comedic turn than she had. But I think they take the comedy out of Rey, which Luke was one of the, had witty banter sometimes. And Han was the most witty, was the wittiest, right? Well, they take out the witty banter from Luke and they give it to Leia, right?
Okay.
And they just kind of swap it around a little bit. So now he gets to be the funny one. But I see that kind of how that parallels for me personally.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. And actually, something that makes me like the film more in retrospect, the actor who portrays Finn went on Twitter and said that...
John Boyega.
John Boyega? Boyega, thank you. He went on Twitter and said that Finn's line of, Rey, I need to tell you something, the answer was not going to be I love you, which I thought they were hammering home throughout the movie and made me just gag. I have to say, this movie was about 30% heavier on sap than it needed to be. However, I thought the whole time Finn is in love with Rey. He just wants to let her know, all that kind of stuff. According to the actor, that is not what was going through his head. My suspicion is that he was going to tell her he was force sensitive, although I don't know why that would need to be a big reveal. But in any event, he's not just looking to track her down and confess his love to her. It was some other thing.
Right. Maybe he knew about Palpatine.
Oh wow, yeah, that is, yeah. He read it at a shower stall at one of the starships or something. Was going to bring it up. I did find it a little bit sappy, as I said. I could have used a tad bit less of that.
Well, as far as let me go back real quick. As far as the Kylo Ren stuff,
yeah,
because we had almost finished talking about it, but basically, like you said, you were happy that this was finally it.
That he finally bit it. Man, when he evaporated, I was like, thank God. When she brought him back to life, I was so pissed off. I was like, we were finally done with this guy. There was going to be no more sulking. We could move on with our lives, Rey. We could move on with the plot. She brought him back to life, and I was like, oh no. But then he dies, so everything's fine.
Yeah, and he died giving her the life,
right? Yes,
that she needed, which was good. I like that as well. I didn't mind the character as much as you did. I get a lot of people like complaining. Like the biggest question that everybody freaking asks for some reason is like, "But why did he need a helmet?" And I'm like, "Well, why did Hulk Hogan need to wear feather boas when he walked out?"
Well, and also
he didn't need to.
He's like kind of built up like an ancestor cult around Darth Vader. He keeps Darth Vader's helmet on a pedestal in his room.
And all the Knights of Ren have their helmets. Mm-hmm. That's very clearly a thing they do. I don't know. That argument's stupid to me, but I'm just going to not get into it.
Also seems like a very, very tiny detailed nitpick of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, right.
He didn't need a helmet, and yet he had a helmet.
But everybody does that. That's the fan base, is everybody nitpicks the smallest individual little silly details.
Yeah, I do think that there is this this propensity to go into Star Wars with your arms folded and go, okay, let's see it. And then just to count. There's going to be problems in it. Like in the last film, there were several problems I had in the last film. Although I will say, having looked at how this film affects the franchise, I actually appreciate The Last Jedi much more than I did, because I look at that now and go, wow, okay. In retrospect, Rian Johnson was really trying to do something different. So like when I complain about how every Star Wars film relies very heavily on we're a scrappy group of rebels fighting against the odds, let's hug each other before we die, oh, we made it. He actually was trying to do a different arc than that. He was trying to break out and do something different.
Well, like I said, we talked about now with the three paralleled characters, it felt like Rian Johnson was like, nah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Let's mix it up a little bit. You're going to go with her onto a casino planet, and you're just going to be mean and be a bad employee of the military for the rest of the movie.
Well, I did. Okay, I guess I hated the casino planet thing. It was a funny intro when Rose says, who are they? The worst people in the galaxy. And then it's rich people clinking champagne glasses.
Politicians.
Very, very good comedic bit there. Everything following that was pointless and useless, other than like this sort of vague emotional impulse that greed is bad and animals are good, which took like, for anybody that's not bothered by that, it would be the equivalent of me making a film and taking a 20-minute diversion from everything to have characters wax eloquent about the utility of markets in terms of general prosperity and helping the poor. Like, imagine just going, oh my God, I can't believe this guy is doing this. I did not like that bit. There were several problems that I had with the Last Jedi, but I do appreciate the depth of it more than I did.
Well, that's another podcast for another day.
Yeah.
we can rip into that someday.
Sure. Well, I'll mention Rian Johnson, at least intentionally, wanted to avoid making Rey anyone in terms of a family surname, and he says in the DVD extras that the most difficult answer for her and who her parents would be was no one. That is the most difficult answer for her to wrestle with, because if it had been your Rey Skywalker or your Rey Kenobi, she now knows how she fits into the universe, or even Palpatine. She would know how she fits into the universe. If she's just nobody and she has to actually figure herself out as a character, that is a bigger hill to overcome. And I look back at that and I'm like, okay, so there was a point to all this.
I can appreciate that, but I hate it.
So let's do a meta shot here. First of all, so there's 3 trilogies we're operating with. Which is your favorite trilogy, and is there a trilogy you don't like?
Well, 4, 5, 6.
Or rank the trilogies in order of preference.
4, 5, 6.
Okay.
It's my favorite trilogy.
Me too.
Then it goes 7, 8, 9. Then it goes 1, 2, 3.
Me too.
And it's really just because it's okay. So I rewatched everything, and I have seen all of them multiple times. But I rewatched the original 6, right? Mm-hmm. Well, actually, I rewatched the original 8 before this one. And I got through 1, 2, and 3, or I should say 4, 5, and 6, because I watched them in release order, preferably. And so I watched those, and I got through those 3 in 3 days. Now, this is me going on the subway, and watching it, and coming home and finishing 3 days. I got through 1, 2, and 3 within, maybe 2.5 weeks.
you finished it and then just go, ugh.
It took so long to just bear to get through some of that. I mean, the Gungan bit is, I'm sorry, I felt bad for the actor that played Jar Jar and for all of that, but the language is stupid regardless. Luckily he wasn't himself, and he was playing, I don't even know what the real guy looks like, which I prefer for his sake.
Yeah, I think it's best for him if he remains unknown.
But it's just one of those things where some of those, the storylines in some of that bit just feel so random and it's just so hard to care. and to want to keep watching it.
I don't think so going back to my three criteria from earlier of does it work as a film, is it subjectively enjoyable, and does it work as a Star Wars film in particular, I would say that the prequels do not work as films as well as the other trilogies, nor are they as enjoyable as the other trilogies. So my ranking is much the same as yours. I enjoyed 4, 5, 6 the most, and I enjoyed all of the films in this most recent trilogy. There were things that I would change, but I did enjoy all of them. I saw all of them at least twice.
I think the prequels would work more as a Netflix series or Disney Plus series. Mm-hmm. Like, it makes more sense to me of that being a show. Like, it doesn't feel big enough, and it doesn't feel like it's as compelling and really there as much. I mean, certain storylines, certain bits, certain characters, right? Darth Maul, still, so underutilized. What a cool character they've made up. But at the same time, it just doesn't, none of that really works as well. And these ones would be my second favorite. The 7, 8, 9 would be my second favorite. Personally, I mean, I enjoyed Force Awakens a good amount. I enjoyed Last Jedi. Not as much. I think it's probably my third of the three, because I did like this one a good amount. Probably second, maybe right after Force.
Interesting. Okay. So overall, we're giving it reasonably high marks. You're giving it higher marks than me. However, I do not view it. I will say this was panned really hard by critics. Like, this got 50% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. Like it.
I think it's impossible now. I think it's genuinely impossible now to do something like this with how we are working as this is how ratings work.
Yeah.
And just the idea that there are people, and I remember they tried to shut this down for Rotten Tomatoes or something, where it was people were giving them things like a bunch of 0 ratings before it even came out.
Right.
Like Captain Marvel was getting absolutely demolished, Black Panther too, before they even came out, just because people are racist and whatever, and being bigoted and whatnot, and so they immediately tear it down. But then in this case, you have all these people that are so loyal to these original 3 movies that, by the way, have a lot of silly crap in them. I mean, I love the movies, but they have a lot of silly crap in them, and there's a lot of random things that are why is that in there? Maybe even more so than horses on a destroyer.
I doubt that. However, I will concede the general point.
I tried to bring it around. You see how I tried?
Yeah. That's good. Well, Joe, before we wrap things up, let's see. I'll throw out a few things that I liked about the film. I liked the relationship between Rey and Leia. And I thought I like that they were able to incorporate Leia into this film. I thought Leia's overall character arc was really impressive. I got to say, it's neat that there's a character in film that has a 45-year run. And she goes from being the warrior princess, sometimes in a bikini, sometimes leading the rebellion, to being an elder statesman and a general, and then an ersatz Jedi master. And it was impressive. I liked that.
Yeah. Well, they also retconned that a bit, because I know the whole bit in Last Jedi where she flies back into the window, sort of Michael Jordan style.
Yeah.
Then they talk about her training in this one.
Yeah.
And they talk about her Jedi training and how she did get to the point where she was ready, and she even beats Luke in combat. She has Luke down, and then she has to take care of her son, and she just doesn't want it.
Mm-hmm. So she's basically she's like an uninitiated Jedi. She didn't walk. She didn't go to graduation.
Exactly. But she learned all the same stuff.
Yeah, but I liked that. I also say the movie was visually stunning. I thought it was just a really impressive, from the intro scene with the giant, weird, monolithic Sith thing, and the sort of floating glacier astral city. And as much as I'm gonna hold back on my actually nerdisms here, of the bizarre tactical strategy of having all of your death-destroying ships within 40 feet of each other on one planet. Odd. However, looked cool. And all of when all of the other forces are all popping in, I likewise thought that looked cool.
That felt very Endgame-y to me.
I haven't seen Endgame.
It's very much Avengers Endgame-y. Everything's coming in at the end. I noticed that, and no, end is not a pun. It's just that they're they just pop in and you're like, oh, here comes this group that we know from the past. They didn't get a lot of those because I think they killed off a lot of people. So there weren't like a lot of people in the ships where you're like, oh, I remember them. They only showed like one.
Oh, okay. Wait, here's a question before I forget. Lando Calrissian, is he Jara's dad, or is he going to have sex with her? I could not tell. At the end,
God.
She sits down next to him and is like, where are you from? And he's like, I'm from such and such. Where are you from? I don't know. Well, let's find out. And I was like, I'm like looking around the audience going, what am I supposed to make of this? Is he like...
I actually also was very unsure in that moment. I like to think that he's just like is being nice to her.
Yeah, okay. Let me think. Anything else we need to talk about? Here, just to drive this home, I really did love that they made Palpatine the overall villain. I thought that was a really cool stroke. I thought Palpatine was super cool.
Me too. I did for a while think, like, why is he just leaning up against the wall?
He's super casual. Palpatine's become really casual. Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, it's the machine. Because they don't really clearly show it at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
He's just kind of like, because they don't want to show the throne, I think, early on. So they just show him. But he does look like he's just like leaning up against the wall. And I'm like, what's he doing? Like, what's wrong with Palpatine? Why is he just leaning there?
Yeah.
And then they were like, I was like, oh, cool machine that like picks him up and stuff. And that was really cool. But at the beginning, I was like, I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah. No, I agree. But I did like him. I thought he did a good job of being, kind of the supreme sort of witch king. I liked the creepy Sith audience that sort of implies that there's like a Sith cult. Like I guess there's only 2 Sith at any given time, but there's sort of a cult of minions that support them. Like
it's also very much like the Senate.
Oh yeah, it does kind of feel like that. Yeah, that man, he loves monologuing. Palpatine, you know what? You could take the politician out of Congress. You can't take the politician out of politician. What's a politician? Always a politician. And I did really like that by virtue of having Palpatine be the villain again for all 3 trilogies, which is a cool move. It also explains what the hell the First Order is to a greater extent, and it certainly explains what the hell Snoke is to a greater extent. Because that was one of the big letdowns I had with The Last Jedi was. I was like, I thought Snoke was going to turn out to be Darth Plagueis.
A lot of people, yeah.
Or there was going to be some interesting backstory. And it's like, no, he's just some guy. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. And it's like, well, now we know that he's either like a sock puppet that was being used by Palpatine, or alternately, he was a creation of Palpatine that was either wittingly or unwittingly servile to him. And I like that.
I mean, what he basically says is that he's just using all of this to manipulate Kylo and Rey. Mm-hmm. Everything that's happening, their connection to each other, like everything it's just all him. It's just him doing this just to get to this point in which he thinks for some reason he could change Rey's mind.
Yep.
And get her to join the dark side. What a great ending that would have been. I mean, think about it. How cool would that have been if Rey was just like, all right, cool, and just jumped on the throne and just became the new... I mean, what...
I read a thing on... I'm sorry, Nick. Please continue. I interrupted you.
No. That was about it. It was just the idea that she then becomes the villain for the next trilogy or whatever, and becomes this like Palpatine-like character.
Yeah. What? So I saw this on Reddit. Somebody proposed that a great ending would have been the whole film is exactly as we saw it, except to the very, very end. She's burying Luke and Leia's lightsabers. The old lady comes up and goes, Rey, what? And her eyes turn bright yellow, and she zaps the woman to death with electricity and says, Palpatine, blackout. That would have been amazing if it was...
So that line at the end, let's talk about that really quick.
Okay.
So the ending, I wish she would have got to use the lightsabers. Like, cool that she has her own, really cool, but the fact that we never get to see her use it means that there's got to be more Rey in the future, right?
Oh, presumably.
They just can't get rid of this character. The other thing is, so the idea that there's like, there's got to be like, I also wanted her to see like Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen's like bones and stuff.
They're just still bleaching in the sun. None of the neighbors have come by to clean up. They're like, I don't know who's going to get mad at us for that. Just leave them there.
But also, like that line at the very end, I actually did not find it very cheesy. I thought it was delivered quite well, and sometimes those things can come off really... You know who's really good at making cheesy lines not sound cheesy in these movies? Is John Boyega. Like, Finn is really good at taking a line that I think if most people said, it would sound super cheesy, but he says it often very well, and it comes across funny and or just like proper instead of coming off as cringy, you know? But I felt good about this line, and I know a lot of people were criticizing it, and I saw a video of sorts where they're like, I think actually you might have posted it even, where it's at the end of the film and there's like a bunch of people in the theater going like, don't say it.
Oh,
don't
right.
say
Yeah. Which I have to think was, okay, so the clip you're talking about, which is hilarious. I having thought about this, I think that clip was made up because the people are so over the...
Really?
Well, it's, okay, so for folks at home listening, I found this clip online of somebody recording the end of the movie on their iPhone. They're doing it from the back of the theater, and people are actively talking, and like she's like, what family? People are like, don't say it, don't say Skywalker. And then she says Skywalker, and everybody starts screaming. You see a woman stand up and go, I hate Star Wars. And then my favorite bit is, as it's starting to die down, this guy in the middle just screams, Epstein didn't kill himself. And I was like, it was, I don't know, it was too well orchestrated. I think it was made fun of, or I think that was like done on a green screen or something. But I'll say, I thought that naming the whole film The Rise of Skywalker was a bit much for that one line.
I get
but
that.
the line itself didn't bother me. I mean, I think the takeaway from it is that Rey has decided that she is going to be the author of herself, and she is going to, choose her own family as opposed to being on another path. And she is more aptly the spiritual successor to Leia and Luke than she is to the Palpatine family. I think that's fine.
and also all the Skywalkers are dead, so she really has no one to.
This would be like when perish the thought that it happened anytime. 30 years from now, when Dave Barry dies, I'm like, hey, you guys know Dave Barry adopted me, and I'm now Andrew Barry, beloved humorist.
You know, it's really funny. As I immediately in my head went Heaton Barry. This was the name I gave you.
Exactly. Yeah.
A Heaton Barry.
Yep. A Heaton Barry. Okay, so I think we covered it pretty much. Anything else you want to talk about in the film? Anything we missed?
I really liked all of the new. I like Babu Freak.
Yeah, he was cool. I did like
great
Babu
character.
Freak. I thought he was
and
great.
honestly, the best C-3PO storyline of any of them.
I could lose that. I could lose the C-3PO.
No, it was great. It was very funny. The fact that we get this, like, he gets the restart and everything. It was actually kind of fun and funny as opposed to being annoying, which C-3PO often can be. He gets this kind of fun, sort of silly thing, and like that line in there that caught me off guard and made me laugh actually pretty hard was that one point where someone was like, "Well, Babu Freak will do it," and he was like, "Babu Freak, he's one of my oldest friends."
Yeah.
It was very funny. I enjoyed that.
I'm going to give that subplot a C-. I didn't care for that subplot too much.
The worst.
But Nick, it has been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for coming on to get all Star Wars down with me.
You as usual, and we'll do this about Star Trek one day, and it'll be raucous.
We will, and you'll be back on this very episode in about 45 seconds. So.
Yeah, I'll be right back. I got to use the restroom really quick, and then we can talk about some stuff.
We'll talk about some stuff. Okay. Every week, Nick Sperdute and I visit some planet in the galaxy, some place we go perform comedy. And this last week, we went to Naboo, where we were invited. I'm very flattered. We were invited to perform at the retirement party for Queen Hatarchan. It's like in a palace and everything.
Yeah, it was nice.
Naboo, I like Naboo overall. Well, I like it. Okay, we'll get to all of it in a minute. The parts that are not underwater are nice.
Fine.
I would say Naboo is just if you've never been there, you're unfamiliar with Naboo, picture southern France with a bunch of swamps, and also there are these swamp monsters that live in the swamp. But the non-swamp parts, lovely. Good architecture, very airy, very spacious. Kind of reminds me of like Spain or like southern France, maybe Italy.
Above the surface, big fan.
Super clean.
The Queen retired.
Which, okay, did you understand what was happening there? Because she can't be over 17.
No, I think she was actually about 16.
Really? So why is she retiring? How's that work?
She already was in service for 11 years. It's kind of long for a queen.
I guess. I just like our Earth's queen, Elizabeth II.
Earth's queen.
Yeah, Earth's queen, right? Okay. I assume she's
the one we know.
Whenever we say the queen, no one's asking about like Queen Tabitha of Denmark or whatever. It's Queen Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. But she's been rocking hard for like 50 years.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily done there by family.
Do they? Okay,
it's very much an appointment based. So they kind of just took that. So right now they need a wartime queen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they're trying to avoid it, but they have a conflict right now, I believe. So they're attempting to get a wartime queen so that she can take care of more of the actual situation.
I didn't get a chance to talk to her.
I did.
You did? Was she cool?
Yeah. Really loves pork.
Really?
She was big into like Memphis barbecue.
How about that?
Yeah, it was interesting. I didn't even bring it up.
Really?
She brought it because she said like, "Where are you from?"
And you were like,
I explained I live in New York and all that, and she was like, "Oh, like United States," and I was like, "Yeah," and she was like, "Oh my gosh, Earth and America." She was like, "Oh, have you ever been to Memphis? Do you ever eat their barbecue?" And I was like, "Oh, that's so funny." You'd be like, "Yeah, I love barbecue, and Memphis barbecue is great." You know, it's just
did she do like a study abroad or something?
No, never. She's never left Naboo. We talked about this too, but it's kind of one of those things you just kind of get it in your mind of a place you always wanted to go.
I get that. The comedy we did. I would describe the audience as sober. Like, imagine a country club environment.
Yeah.
There was a guy that was there, because a bunch of people are there, right? Like, for whatever reason, the Swedish embassy was there. I didn't even know the Swedes had an embassy on Naboo.
No, me neither.
They do. And there was a guy from there, him there. There was a bunch of people in, crazy uniforms and things. There was a Gungan. Now, I didn't even know Gungans lived on Naboo. I thought Gungans lived on, like, I don't know, Gungus Prime or something. Or maybe they, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure.
I was also unaware of this situation.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And we got invited to go do a show.
He comes up after. He's very friendly. And he's like, "You're really funny. I host an open mic night here on Naboo. It's a monthly open mic night. A lot of local comics. We'd be really flattered if you came."
Didn't know we were going underwater.
No, I didn't know that either.
Tell you that.
I figured it was like going to be just at a bar. But no, they live like... Okay, I'm going to back it. Before we get to the comedy, what the hell is the relationship between the humans on Naboo and the Gungans?
I have no clue.
Is this like a South Africa situation where it's the Gungan home? Well, yeah, but like, whose planet is it? Is it the Gungan planet and the humans came in and now
it's peaceful, I think.
It is, yeah, but nobody talked about it, which is weird. And but yeah, we go underwater. The Gungan city, and I don't know if there's multiple ones, but anyway, I'm going to say very pretty.
I'm lovely.
Very pretty, like super bubbly.
That's why I'd compare it to Atlantis.
Yeah.
It's
It's
that
very apt.
vibe.
Downside, mold.
So let's talk about the show a little bit. Wow.
Gungan humor's terrible.
It's awful.
It's awful.
Really
Gungan
bad.
humor, imagine the Three Stooges with one stooge. One third stooge power. Pratfall oriented, super physical comedy, a lot of fart jokes, a lot of poking each other in the eye, very punny. It would have been a bad open mic night anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
But in the Gungan city,
loved it.
All the people there, and it was a good turnout. It wasn't just comedians. There were a lot of couples and things. Like maybe it's a college town. I don't really know. But they thought it was super funny. They liked you.
Well, I mean, I fell a lot on purpose. I tend to take on the city's humor a little bit more.
You're more versatile than I am.
You stick to political humor sometimes.
Well, no, I wasn't doing any political humor, but I was doing observational humor.
Okay, but tax reform in itself isn't that
tax day. Every culture has tax day. That's not even political. That's just me. What does everybody relate to? Death, sex, taxes, right? And I don't know how
not the Gungans.
Reproduce. Yeah, they did. No, well, I don't know that they pay taxes, and I don't understand how that society even functions. They're all fallen down so much. You remember when I tried to order Seamless? That took 4.5 hours.
I'll tell you what, that was
and that guy completely he just couldn't care less. Was like, "Oh, my bad," and then he came in and wanted to watch TV with us at the hotel, and I was like, "What are you doing? Give me the goddamn food and get the fuck out." It was just
Here's what I'll say: that whole experience was not seamless. Obviously, you know why I'm upset.
I am too.
But no, you know why I'm upset.
Yes, I am upset for the same reason you are, because I have to put up with them now too. Let's talk about Joe Blob.
I saved a fucking Gungan.
You saved a fucking Gungan, and now you got another goddamn life debt.
It's just a calamity.
Oh, man. So, okay, for people that, if anybody new to the podcast, Nick and I do this every week. About a fortnight ago, we were on Kashyyyk, and we were great time on Kashyyyk. And Nick saved 6 Wookiees who now have a life debt to him, and they now live with Nick and his wife in a 2-bedroom apartment in New York City,
in Brooklyn.
And like, I'm very pro Wookiee. I've enjoyed the situation. I understand why it's frustrating for Nick. I find it hilarious. I like these guys. They're fun to travel with. The Gungan, I do not like. Dislike. I do not care for. I'm going to apologize here. I don't normally swear on this podcast, but I so dislike Gungans, and specifically Joe Blob. How the fuck do you drown as a Gungan? You saved him from, he lives in a friggin' underwater city.
Well, I've heard about people drowning in puddles before.
Yes.
But I've never seen it.
But he's a Gungan. Like, yeah. And then I talked to them about this. Apparently, Gungans can either breathe underwater or they can breathe above land, drown if they're half in, half out.
Yeah, that was.
It's like evolution screwed up with them pretty hard.
Well, it's because he rolled down that hill.
He rolled down that hill, and then he face into a puddle.
Right into the puddle.
Because it's dripping everywhere.
Yeah, and I pulled him out and was like, hey, buddy, you okay? And he gave me that look. Oh, God, that same fateful look, and I went, you gotta be kidding me.
Misa thinks you saved my life, or whatever his line was.
Misa saved my life. Yeah, it's a lot of Misa, Wisas, and Yusas. And honestly,
a superfluous amount, if I might add to that. Yeah. Of course, Yusa Thinka, right? You're talking. What else am I? It's like if you're writing an opinion column, never say I think. Clearly you do, asshole. You're writing an opinion column that's redundant. Yeah. Ditto the Misa stuff.
I agree with you, bud, but right now, I'm just trying to live my life.
Oh, and God.
This is becoming as frustrating as possible.
So, like, it was funny when there were 6 Wookiee. Now there's 6 Wookiee and Joe Blob. So you've got 6 Wookiee and a Gungan, and the Gungan has to come with you.
They hate each other.
They don't get along.
They can't stand each other.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give him credit. He already has a job.
Oh, yeah?
The Gungan got a job really quick. Political consultant or something. He got a job super quick.
Yeah.
And he's doing really well for himself. He's making a lot of money.
At least
bringing it back.
Paying his own way. That's true.
He's the only one. God. Well, except for Chewbecca, who's doing very well, by the way. She started her channel on Fiverr.
That's
been
great.
Selling like a lot to people.
She's making like logos for podcasts. What is she? Because I know she's an artist, but what is she doing?
Well, she does podcast logos, but that's not the exclusive bit.
Right. So it's like one of the things
she can do that, but it's also just kind of general graphic design.
Okay.
But she's fantastic.
She's really talented.
So she's also the one bringing in money, and she's been nice enough to like basically.
Yeah, when I came over the other night, she bought everybody a pizza, which was a really nice gesture.
She's kind of everyone.
No, she's very high in empathy.
But here's the thing: they fight a lot.
Oh, God!
And somehow Joe Blob always wins. He keeps falling over himself. He's knocking stuff off.
How is that?
I don't know, but he's broken 6 windows in the apartment, and he just keeps falling over. But somehow, he keeps tackling everyone.
He'll fall over and knock into your lampshade, and somehow that will hit the Wookiee. Like that'll hit Tarful, and he'll knock the hat rack over, and that'll crash into Longfar Jr. and Longfar Jr.'s out for the count. And I'm like, How could you possibly have? But no, he's on top of stuff.
Well, and he ends up knocking the Wookiees into each other a lot. That's kind of been the main.
It's a whole species they're, from what I can tell, and I mean this honestly, their evolutionary defense appears to be proactive clumsiness.
Yes, 100%.
Like, and I don't even understand how that works. But the other weird thing too, no Gungan to Wookiee Google Translator program.
No,
so they can't communicate.
They can't understand each other at all.
They know enough to piss each other off.
Well, the thing
but not enough to solve it.
The Gungan basically, I mean, like Joe Blob basically speaks English. It's like Pig Latin, more or less. And so he's somewhat got it, but the Wookiees don't understand that. They're picking up English pretty well now. Yeah. They've gotten to that point.
Yeah, no, because they watch TV a lot.
Yeah, they watch a lot of
they've been watching it with subtitles.
So I ordered a protocol droid.
Good.
Yeah, so that they can maybe try to work this whole thing out, and I can try to end these life debts just like in general.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I'm fine with still being friends with the Wookiees.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. But if I cannot do this thing where they have to live in my apartment,
right,
and
the Gungan, Jesus, just
Joe Blob's a lot. So I'm trying. I got a protocol droid. As soon as it arrives, I'm going to set it up, and hopefully we could just end this thing.
You know the thing I most dislike about Joe Blob?
What?
He doesn't understand that we don't like him.
Well, the other thing is we don't want to say it to him.
He keeps saying he's a comedian because he did an open mic one time. You're not a comedian because you did a shitty open mic one time. You don't get to claim that, Joe Blob.
He killed.
Yes, he killed for a group of Gungans.
But I'll say this. Joe Blob, and because we don't obviously say we don't like him to his face because we're not mean-spirited people. So we say Snow Globe. We hate Snow Globe.
Right.
And he also hates Snow Globe. And he always makes fun of Snow Globe thinking that we're talking about him or someone else. And we're actually talking about him. Ugh.
I don't even like coming over anymore. Because like I loved coming over when it was just you, Megan, and the Wookiees. But now
that sounds like a good TV show.
It does sound like a TV show, and it kind of felt like one. And I was kind of like the Kramer of this scenario. But
now
Joe you got Joe Blob. No, now it's like they paradropped in a character from the Big Bang Theory, but it's the Big Bang. It's that character, and also that character's just friggin' like falling over ottomans all the time.
Yeah.
And it alters the whole thing. The other thing too is that it's gotten really awkward because Joe Blob found out that, okay, so I need to back up here because I don't want to hurt your feelings. I am in a D&D group with the Wookiees.
What?
Yes. Okay. So the reason that I have
Wait a minute. What?
Okay. Yes.
What did you just say?
Okay. So you know how the Wookiees are never there on Wednesdays? We're in a D&D group and I would love for you to come. But the Wookiees like you, but you're kind of like their boss, right?
So they're not protecting my life on Wednesday nights because they're playing D&D with you?
Yeah. You got to take that up with them, man. I don't know. I don't know how the life debt thing works.
Listen, I'm not tied to the whole life debt thing again, but I'm a little insulted. But they made it seem like they were going to a church thing.
Yeah.
And actually they're just going to play.
Yes. They're going to play D&D with me. I'm the DM, at least this time around. I don't want to do it all the time. It's actually a lot harder being a DM than I thought.
It's a lot.
Joe Blob found out, and he wants to join the D&D group, and I do not want him to join the D&D group. And also, like, we've been doing this for a month. I don't want to have to roll a new character for friggin' Joe Blob.
Yeah.
And I just,
also 8 people. I mean, even 7 people is a lot for a D. Do they all play?
Yeah, they all play. Yeah.
So 7 people is a lot. So 8 people, that's a ton.
Yeah.
And you got probably a bard. Right? Most likely. Let's be honest.
Yeah. I don't know what Joe Blob would be, but the thing is, like, it's just very uncomfortable because I don't want to flat out turn it down, but he heard about the D&D group and then assumed he would be invited. And every time I talk to him, all he does is talk about how excited he is that he's going to play D&D. No one told him he was coming in. That's his inference, but we didn't correct him. And so now, like, I was hoping he'd forget. He has not forgotten. And now I don't want to come over because I don't want to have to deal with this. And I don't think I should have to just because of the DM.
Well, here's the thing. Maybe you should take him so that maybe they start to maybe get along a little bit more if they're like get to know him instead of just fighting all the time.
Well, okay, but the D&D night's my night too. Why should I have to sacrifice?
Well, I didn't even know this night existed until about 15 seconds ago.
Right, okay. This is why we need a protocol droid.
You're right.
This is why we need a protocol droid.
As soon as this protocol droid comes in, I want you there.
Yeah, okay, fine.
I want you there, and so that we can talk to this thing first, and then maybe try to figure out what the hell's going on.
Okay.
Because there's some stuff. I'm pissed. Can you see?
Your nostrils are flaring. I feel I am conflict averse, and I feel very uncomfortable right now.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't mean feel uncomfortable. But
everybody's feelings are legitimate here. You know, it's fine. It's just the factor that has made all of this so much harder is Joe Blob.
No, the factor that has made this so much harder is that I have 6 Wookiees living with me and a goddamn Gungan. I can't do this anymore, Heaton. I'm cracking. Can't you see that I'm fucking cracking here, man? I'm melting down as we speak. I can barely breathe because all these people and all this fur, oh my God, the fur around me all of the time is making me feel like I'm crumbling into a little itty bitty piece of shit.
So we're going to wrap up. I'm going to leave my dustbuster at your place. Help a little bit. Maybe I'll get you a Hoover for Christmas or Life Day. Favorite thing, least favorite thing about Naboo? I'll go first.
Why don't you go first?
Favorite thing about Naboo? Honestly, I really did appreciate how punctual the public transit was. It was very easy to navigate. I didn't get confused at any point. Least favorite thing, Joe Blob.
Clearly.
I don't want to castigate an entire group of people, but not a fan of Gungan humor.
I will say my favorite thing about Naboo was the Queen. So nice.
I'm jealous.
And the guard, the High Guard, incredibly nice. Everybody's
nice.
there. They made me feel like really at home.
That's great.
And whenever they come to town, they're definitely going to come visit, most likely.
Cool. Let me know when they come, because I would love to hang out.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe I will.
Okay. Least favorite thing? I'm assuming Joe Blow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously.
Scale of 1 to 10.
Shitbag.
How likely are you to go back?
0. Except for to drop off Joe Blow. I'll go above the surface any day.
Yeah. I'm going back, but I'm not bringing a snorkel. That's my position. Above ground, I'm going to give it an 8.
Yeah. I will give it an 8.5. Below the surface, negative.
Good to hang out with you.
You too, bud.
All right. We did it, you guys. Our friendship and the podcast survived the raging controversy, which is the Rise of Skywalker. Now, I know how this works. I know that many of you, in fact, most of you, probably shouted at some point during this episode and then crashed your car into a tree because we screwed up some aspect of Star Wars lore or left out a blindingly obvious plot hole or plot resolution. I get it. Might I humbly suggest we take the conversation to this show's Discord channel. If you go to mightyheaton.com/Discord, that will direct you to Heaton's Heathens Discord page, where you can find an entire channel devoted entirely to Star Wars and people that listened to this show and want to talk to you about it. Special thanks to Nick Sperdute for coming on as today's guest and then returning again after a mere 10-second intermission to talk about our trip to Naboo. Also, I want to give a shout out to Eric Kane of Forbes, who wrote a great piece entitled "The Critics Must Be Crazy, The Rise of Skywalker is the Best Star Wars Movie in the New Trilogy." All that stuff I said about parallels between Mustafar and Episode 3, I got those from him. Thank you, Eric Kane. And thank you, Taylor Stanridge, for cleaning up the audio.